Hello and welcome to the Press Room with WCN-TV, where we dive deeper into topics from recent editions of the Wilson County News. The Press Room is brought to you by the Wilson County News, your source for community and communication. I'm your host, Julia, the Marketing and Social Media Specialist. Today's episode is sponsored by the Go Wilson 360 Community Calendar. It's a free online calendar where you can post your community-wide events. All it takes is a visit to gowilson360.com, a few clicks and basic information to create your account, and you're ready to post your first event. Go Wilson 360 is a product of the Wilson County News, your community resource. To learn more about sponsoring the Press Room, call us at 830-216-4519. Everything we're talking today has appeared in recent editions of the weekly Wilson County News. We're covering the following topics. From water to Home Depot, what's going on in Elmendorf? You'll learn the answer to this question from George L. Juke, Jr., Place 3 Councilman on the Elmendorf City Council. You'll also learn more about what councilmen and women do. The May 6, 2023 elections are over and the results are in. If you missed that information, see the election coverage page at wilsoncountynews.com/category/election-coverage. Also linked in the description. Wilson County News editor Nanette Kilby-Smith will help us piece together what the election results mean for both citizens and the newly elected officials. You can subscribe to print, digital, or both editions of the Wilson County News at wilsoncountynews.com/subscribe, so you never miss an edition of your local newspaper. Feel free to follow us where you're watching today, so you're always up to date on the Press Room and our other WCN-TV news. First on today's show, we're talking what's going on in Elmendorf from water to Home Depot. You'll meet George Juke. He serves on Elmendorf City Council as the Place 3 Councilman and will update us on recent developments in the city, including several decisions made by the council in recent meetings. Welcome to the Press Room.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you back on.
It's good to be around when you get to be my age. You're just glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. So who are you and what do you do?
My name's George Juke, Jr. I'm a city councilman for the city of Elmendorf. Lived in Elmendorf since 1960.
Wow.
And started out on the farm outside of town, and the town kind of took me in. So I got involved and ended up on the city council.
That's pretty cool, yeah. So would you say you're like a lifelong resident?
Well, it's been most of my life, and I've probably been out there longer than most people that are involved with the city. So it gives me an insight on some things. And,
right.
It's changed a lot out there in some ways, and in other ways hasn't changed that much at all. So,
that's good.
But changes are coming.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about some of that today. So when did you become part of Elmendorf City Council?
I joined the city council last July.
Great, yeah.
And it's been a learning experience. I've learned that I have to trust the staff over there. Once you get to know them, and understand where they're coming from on some issues, it's a little easier to figure out why things are the way they are.
Right.
And it's like that in anything. It's like starting a new job.
That's true, yeah. You've got to learn the ropes.
Yes, you do. And sometimes you have to tone down the expectations. And on the other hand, some things, there are opportunities for things that you might not have seen coming in. So you just take the good with the bad.
Right. That's really cool. And so one thing that you seem to have experienced lately, to quote your recent guest editorial in the Wilson County News, is that life presents situations that are just lemonade sometimes. So what led you to conclude that?
We had to deal with the private sewer provider that'll be in Hickory Ridge, Aqua, Texas. The situation I thought could have been different, but after the negotiations with the attorneys, reading the whole Texas water code from one end to the other,
Wow.
which it's a very well written law. I came to the conclusion that the public was served as best as it can be for this situation.
Right.
Elmendorf could not provide the sewer service out there. We would have had to have a bond issue. I doubt it would have passed.
Yeah.
Because most of the old part of Elmendorf does not have municipal sewer, will not have municipal sewer for some time.
Right.
It'll come in the future, but it'll be expensive. So the people who are going to benefit from having municipal sewer in Elmendorf, who have it already, and the people in Hickory Ridge, they're the ones paying for it. That's the way it should be.
Right, that makes sense. So now that that decision has been made, what would this mean for the future residents of that development?
For Hickory Ridge, they'll be paying about $250 more than the residents in Homewood.
Okay.
But there are reasons for that. Right. And it's a brand new system.
So that's one reason, yeah.
Given today's inflation and everything, I think the developer is probably thanking his lucky stars that he got this nailed down when he did.
Yeah.
Because the financing that was available a few years ago when all this was planned, interest rates have gone up since then.
It's crazy.
Which makes me wonder if they tried to make that same deal today, if they could have even done it.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. You have to have sewer, or the whole subdivision ends up being on bigger lots for septic systems, which are not the most desirable. They're high maintenance in some respects. In that sugar sand, I've heard of people having problems where the sand just gets into the pipes and literally they have to be cleaned out or the whole system replaced. And it's always a better situation in a municipality to have, municipal sewer. So developers secured it. The development has it. The cost is what it is. The home buyer will just take that into consideration like he would anything else when he's making the decision. If you go through that subdivision, the streets are open now. You'll see what a beautiful place it is. And I think people are just going to accept that like they'd accept the high cost of anything.
Of buying a house anyways.
Yes. Yeah. But I think it's going to be a great place for people to move in, raise families, enjoy being close to San Antonio,
right,
or close to the coast.
Yes.
You can get to the coast quicker from Elmendorf than anywhere on the north side of San Antonio.
That is very true.
You go through a lot less traffic, and it's very enjoyable out there. It's on a hill. It's got good views, elevation. You got a lot of breeze. So the place is going to succeed. I'm very convinced of that. The city doesn't play that big a role in a lot of ways. That's a good job by the developer and the builders to put together something that people will want. And even with the rising interest rates, life goes on for people your age. You got to find a house. You want to find the best one you can get. Young folks with educations make enough money to afford that kind of thing, and they'll be there. That's what we're counting on.
And I hope that that comes to fruition.
No, I believe it will.
Good, yeah. And so how would this sewer decision, or would this sewer decision even affect any current Elmendorf residents?
It does not.
Okay.
That was one of the touchstones I make my decisions on, that this cost of growth is not imposed on the existing residents.
Right.
It's an injustice to do that to them. The traffic and things like that, you really can't control as much. That will change. But imposing higher taxes or anything like that to bring about that kind of development, I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think I'd be in office very long doing something like that. So it's just common sense and social justice. You don't do that.
Absolutely. And so by handing over those sewer development responsibilities to this private company, the city is able to not have to raise taxes for current residents.
Right. It's neutral on that. The benefits of that subdivision, I think, to Elmendorf will be considerable, and the inconveniences will be minimal. It's on the other side of 1604.
Okay.
So the extra traffic really won't come through Elmendorf. Right. It's going to be like a new city. The thing to do going forward, if I'm still around to be a part of those decisions, is to let the benefits come into the older part of town. When you have a tax base that's bigger, you can do more things, and that's one of the limits Elmendorf has had. We can't borrow excessively. It makes no sense.
Because you don't have the tax base to eventually.
Right, and you don't have the customer base,
right.
Which is in the case of this sewer system. Aqua, Texas had to borrow the money, and they're entitled to a fair return on it. The rates are higher, but they were set by the Public Utilities Commission, and the city staff urged us on the council, recommended we go ahead and approve them on the same rates that were presented to the PUC. So that's how it'll be.
Right.
And I think it's a decent enough system. It's going to work out.
Good.
So
yeah.
The folks somewhere down the road, if that really is an issue, those residents can address it, by being part of the council or letting us on the council know what they want. But I think we arrived at a good place on this, and the attorneys did their jobs,
Yeah.
Which is the other thing you learn when you're part of the council, that some of this stuff just has to be turned over to the experts,
Yeah.
and proper decisions arrived at.
Well, speaking of and sticking on the water topic, at your April 20th City Council meeting, y'all also approved an update to the city's flood prevention ordinance. Is flooding a concern for much of Elmendorf? And if so, how would this help protect the lives and property of current citizens and future?
Years ago, they did quite a flood control job in Elmendorf. I don't think it's a big concern now. However, the only way to test it, you have to have rain.
Yeah.
We haven't really had,
A lot of rain.
not in the last 20 years,
Wow.
not bad rain. It'll come, and then we'll know, and I think it's going to turn out fine. There's only one place that I'm aware of that I would not go if it was raining hard, and that's on Schultz Road. Everyone in Elmendorf knows to stay away from there.
Yeah.
And there's really not too many reasons to go down that road, because 1604 will take you right up to Old Corpus Christi. You avoid it completely. So that kind of flooding shouldn't ever be an issue in the old part of Elmendorf. In Hickory Ridge, for instance, at the elevation over there, that will never be affected by flooding.
Yeah.
And Homewood is in a similar situation. It's on the side of a hill, so we're in pretty good shape for flood control. Some of that is federal driven. They draw the flood maps, and that goes back to who needs to get the flood insurance riders on their insurance and everything.
Okay.
And that's where most of that was, driven by. They present that to the city staff. City staff codifies it and presents it to the council, and we approve it. It's kind of a routine thing, but that impact shouldn't. I think we're in good shape for flood control
Well, that
in
is
Elmendorf.
good to hear. Yeah. So another thing that we were excited to learn about is the truth behind the code-named Project Jezebel. So what can you tell us about the Home Depot development and what that would mean for Elmendorf in the future?
Elmendorf will benefit from this warehouse and distribution center being built because of its proximity. There's only a small part of that property that's actually in Elmendorf, but Elmendorf will supply the water.
Okay.
So it's part of the Alamo Junction development out there that's in San Antonio, ETJ, and in Elmendorf. So that's a public-private partnership. Elmendorf has no obligations to this Home Depot facility under the old 380 agreements that were signed that some of the businesses were part of, because most of that is in the San Antonio side. But we will benefit from having good jobs at that facility. And we have plenty of new subdivisions there opening up, Homewood and Hickory Ridge. So it's a good time to be in Elmendorf.
Absolutely. And you also mentioned that these subdivisions that are opening up, like Hickory Ridge and Homewood, would also benefit Elmendorf as a whole. I assume that means because of more opportunity for some businesses to open up and for the tax base to raise and for the city to be able to do more for
it's going to transform Elmendorf from a sleepy little place that it's been as long as I've lived out there. It's going to transform us. I think it's going to be good. There will be challenges, but that's inevitable. I would much prefer the situation we're in to the situation you have in places like New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, California, Illinois, Minnesota.
Right.
These are states where people are leaving and they're coming here for all sorts of good and bad reasons. Growth is a natural thing for an American to deal with. That's in our gene pool, literally.
Yeah.
When you travel to cities like I did years ago, we were on a family trip. We went through Buffalo, New York. At that time, and this was about 30 years ago, there was abandoned factory after abandoned factory after abandoned factory. It's that's not something you see and you realize, well, something happened up here that wasn't good. Those businesses are gone. Those people have nowhere to work. They're likely gone. So I would much rather be here
where we're growing,
where we are in the sand country here. It's a good place to be.
And that's helping to keep Elmendorf and its traditions and history alive too.
Yeah. Yes. We have a few, a little history.
Yeah.
And the traditions, when a town transforms like that, most of that's going to be the new folks coming in that will make that new history. Folks like you are sitting at my age. I'm very hopeful and very confident that they're going to say that the right decisions were made and things turned out in a good way.
Well, I'm glad that you have a very positive outlook on that situation of growth. But speaking of, are there any other projects or goals in the works for Elmendorf City Council?
Well, we're going to have a presentation on an upgrade to the water meter system. That's not really exciting news, but
it's necessary.
Yes, it presents us an opportunity to help our customers know if they have a leak.
Yeah.
I had a situation last year where water was pooling, and I was thinking, oh, that's my neighbor's problem. He's got a well. No, it was my problem. I ended up paying a $1,000 water bill.
Wow.
Yeah, so having that ability, I'm going to appreciate anything that the city could do to say, we see your usage is up, and
just want to
maybe
make sure that's okay.
Before the bill gets here. It's going to use receivers placed closer, to the meters that already transmit to a truck that drives around once a month, to read them. Those are kind of technology upgrades that benefit the taxpayer because the meters get read faster.
Yeah.
Those savings can be passed on to the customers. Or if nothing else, it holds the rates steady. And in inflationary times, that's progress.
Yes.
And as for other changes, nothing, just the usual people coming with their zoning requests. I'm seeing more roofs going up right there in the vicinity of City Hall.
Wow.
And that's a good thing. People are coming. Even though people say, well, the mortgage rates are rising, I can tell you that mortgage rates have gone up and gone down in my lifetime. You find a good place, buy it. You can work on renegotiating that interest rate someday if they go back down again. If you can qualify and you're able to afford it, you're in a good place. There's no use waiting. It's not going to get any better sometimes. If you're in a good situation, you got a good job, make the most of it.
Speaking of developments and everything, where should folks go to learn more about the City Council, your recent accomplishments, and your future developments, other than the weekly Wilson County News, of course?
Well, I would recommend going to Wilson County News for it. Certainly. We have a city website. The IT for Elmendorf is transitioning for very good reasons and some bad reasons. If you kept up with the news of what happened in Dallas, we've addressed that. The city staff got ahead of that. We're taking care of it. Hopefully I got more to report on that in the future. It's just we have to wait for the new, providers to get their stuff situated, and then we'll know better what we have on that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for the heads up on that. And like you said, I guess we'll just have to have y'all back on in the future to talk about more, because it seems like Elmendorf, y'all are just go, go, go.
This is a transformational time.
Yeah.
And it's a good transformation. And when you look at life from the far end where I am now, and you look back, you realize that the opportunities for good changes like that, they're rare.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're in a blessed time over there, and that we're going to make the most of it and give these folks that are coming in a good place to come to.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for all the hard, good work that the Elmendorf City Council has been doing for your community. And thank you for your time on the show today to tell us all about it.
Certainly. Thank you for having me.
Next on the show, we're talking with Wilson County News editor Nanette Kilby-Smith. She's going to fill us in on some of the ins and outs of the May 6th election, deciphering terms that appeared on the ballots, and more. The May 6, 2023 elections included races for city councils, city proposals, school district boards, school district propositions, and the Evergreen Underground Water Conservation District's Board of Directors. For more details on that information, you can see the election coverage page of our website, linked in this episode's description. Welcome to the press room.
Thank you. It's nice to be back. It's been a little while.
It has been a while since you've been on. So, let's talk the election. Now that the results are in from the May 6th elections, what are the next steps for those newly elected officials?
Wow. Next steps for the newly elected officials. Well, what happens after the election is all the entities that held the elections will have to canvass the results. So they just look to make sure that the results look right, that there's not discrepancies, and then they vote to approve them, which means, okay, yes, we accept the results of the election. Okay. And then those newly elected will take the oath of office. Matter of fact, some actually, if everything went according to schedule, might have actually been sworn in as soon as last night.
Wow.
We had meetings already lined up this week for some of the entities that were having elections. So some people will already be stepping into their new roles this week.
That's pretty exciting.
It is very exciting, and unlike like our big state and national elections where there's a period of time between when you're elected and when you actually take office,
Yeah.
this is at the local level. A lot of it's very immediate. You know, the term ends in this given month, and as soon as there's the time to canvass the results and approve the election, those people step right in and start getting to work.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So, what do the officials who were not reelected for their positions do?
They'll be at the next available meeting until, you know, there's an oath taking,
Right.
and they'll, in many instances, sit in at the beginning of the meeting, and then once the new people are given the oath of office, they'll step down
Wow.
and take up the threads of whatever. I mean, for the most part, most of our local elected people have day jobs.
Right.
So, you know, there's not going to be any change necessarily in their personal lives. I mean, they go back to work or doing whatever they were doing. They just don't necessarily go to city council or school board meetings anymore.
Right.
But they could choose to.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, they don't have to necessarily step back from being active in public life, but they won't necessarily be as visible.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. Well, how exciting for those newly elected individuals, and good luck on their next steps.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very exciting time. It's also a very busy time.
Yes.
Because they do have to learn, because many people, now some people will have served in other roles and be familiar with what it takes to be in office, and other people will, there's training and stuff that is required for them to do the jobs that they're elected to.
That makes so much sense. Okay.
Busy time.
Speaking of learning, though, I had some questions about the ballots.
Okay.
So, why did some cities and school boards have at-large seats instead of district or places?
That's a really good question. At-large places mean that you don't have a specific district or place that you serve.
Okay.
So you serve the district or the entity at large. So city council at large, you can live anywhere in that city and represent everybody.
Okay.
Whereas if you have a district or a place, single member districts or single member places mean you live in that specified, and there are boundaries drawn. So if it's a school district, you can look at the school district website to see where those boundaries are. Cities have similar maps, and you must live to represent that district or place. You must live in it. You must be a resident of that specific place to run for that seat. And those are not that you don't represent the city or school district in a kind of more global way, but your representation is very specific to those constituents in your district.
Okay, that makes sense. So if one were to want to check out what district they live in,
yes, and some of this information is also on your voter registration card, so that's another good place to look. And you can check with the voter registrar in your county to see some of that.
Yeah.
You can call City Hall and they can check. Good place to start is with your voter registrar. Check your voter registration card, because that not only tells the box that you vote in, like for your county or what have you, but it has other information on it too.
Right. So if I live in, say, District 4 in Floresville, and I wanted to bring something up to my city council, would I want to reach out to the member who corresponds with my district?
That's the best place to start.
Sure.
Because they are the people to take your concerns into the council meeting. They're the people to address your general day-to-day concerns.
Sure.
It's their job as your representative to represent you and to listen to your concerns. So that's the first place to go, by all means. And if you have the same thing with your school district, if you have a single member district, it's a good place to start, is to go with the person who represents you. If you have a general question, obviously, you can go to City Hall or to the school district, but the place to start is with the person that you've just elected to represent and serve you, because that's what they are here to do.
Well, thank you for clarifying that.
Oh, you bet. Happy to. I mean, and I know it's an odd question, and it comes up periodically with elections. Why do we have this, and what does that mean?
Well, another question that I had that stems from the ballots is, what is a proposition, and why do they appear on the ballots instead of being voted on at the organization's meetings?
What's a proposition? It usually refers to something like, as in this most recent election, we had propositions for the school bonds in the Nixon, Smiley, and Livonia school districts. We had propositions on the city of Poth's ballot for the street maintenance tax. And they are things that require voter approval. There'll be something that the body cannot decide on its own because it impacts taxes. So taxpayers have a say in whether these things get done.
Okay.
And it's our duty as taxpayers and as registered voters to go and have our say. That this is our opportunity. Not that you can't go to city council or county commissioners court or school board meetings and voice your concerns, but the ballot box is the one single place where people have a lot of power. This is your voice, not giving your voice to an elected somebody. This is you saying what you want and what's important to you. So it's important to us to use that ballot when we have that opportunity. So propositions are important. Texas voters will have another opportunity to vote on propositions this fall. The state of Texas legislature is currently sitting, not for very many more days this session, but there's already at least one proposition that will be on the ballot. And, be watchful for some more. And there may be others from some of our other elected bodies because we will have, in the fall, we also have some local elections too. So, always be aware to look for those things on the ballot because propositions are an important part. And those are ones that usually either hit you in the wallet or hit you in your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
They will impact your freedom to do certain things, or they'll impact, how much money you have to spend at the end of your taxes.
Yeah, that's very true. One item on the candidates list that we published for this election were county representatives for the Evergreen Underground Water Conservation District's Board of Directors. So my first question having to do with that is, what is the Evergreen Underground Water Conservation District?
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yes.
The Evergreen Underground Water Conservation District was created by the state legislature.
Okay.
And it is part of the water planning and governance process for the entire state because water is a very important resource.
Right.
So the Evergreen Board helps to govern and manage and conserve available groundwater to ensure that water is available for all the purposes which the communities that it serves need it for. And it serves 4 counties, Atascosa, Frio, Karnes, and Wilson.
Okay.
And so all of those counties have an opportunity to elect members to the board. Wilson County did not have a vote this time around because the gentleman who will be representing us now, Diane Savage, who's been representing us on the board for a long time, has decided to step down. And Daryl Brownlow was unopposed to step into that place. But we did have Atascosa and Karnes County had the opportunity to vote for their members on the board.
Right, because they had opposed races.
Yes, they both races actually got more than one candidate to run.
Wow.
So people went to the polls to go, okay, who do I want to represent me on the board?
Okay.
And they have a really important job. This isn't just, hey, I just want to go sit on a water board. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to know. And there's a lot of weight on the shoulders of that board to get it right. They sit, and I may be jumping the gun. I'm anticipating that you're going to ask me about, kind of what they do.
Yeah.
So that board, like I said, it was created by the state. They vote on things such as well permits for a number of purposes, agricultural, commercial, just home kind of things.
Yeah.
They have a say in where other bordering entities that also have water governance, where their wells can be, how much they can pump out of them. Well compliance, like, are you in compliance with your well? Are you pumping more? Because they'll take a look at that. Because obviously this is, as I said, it's an important resource. It's a limited resource.
Yes.
And without it, there's a lot that, life as we know it would be vastly different. And they try and ensure that there's enough for every purpose. So, you just want to manage that. They also do a lot for conservation, obviously,
It's in
of
the name.
this resource, but they promote conservation measures and stuff. It's more about, we're all in this together and we want to make it work for everybody. That's what they do. And they meet on the last Friday, usually of every month. And they post their agenda like other elected bodies are required to do by law.
Right.
And their meetings are free and open to the public, just like city council and school board meetings are.
Cool.
So, I mean, if you're interested in things like that, theirs is a morning meeting as opposed to some that are evening meetings.
Interesting.
Might be harder for people that work. Those were important races, and glad that people turned out to cast ballots for them. It's kind of sad when we have elections and there's little participation.
I agree with that, yeah, because like you said earlier, when you vote, that is your direct say, especially locally.
Mm-hmm.
It's your vote that gets counted, like directly.
It is
Very
literally
direct.
your vote
Yeah.
counts, every single one. And we put in our reportage this year exactly how important it is. We did a comparison with the votes in the Livonia school bond issue in 2016
Yes.
and this year. To be honest, there were a few more votes this year, but the last bond election in Livonia was, give or take, 33 million, and it got voted down. And a few more people voted this year, and it's 109 million.
And it got okayed.
And it got okayed. If you're concerned about that, if you think your property's been overvalued or there's something to take into account, these elections are the ones where your vote matters, because this is tax money we're talking about. And although I have to say, the school bond, people will have noticed, or at least I hope they would, that on the ballots there was required language saying this constitutes a tax increase. Both school districts, Nixon, Smiley, and Livonia, were very careful in their presentations to say, now we're not going to raise your tax rate. They haven't, and they can't immediately. They'll look at tax rates later in the year, and
Right.
they've looked at how they can keep their tax rates at a comparable level to what they currently are.
Right.
But with more properties on the tax rolls and things, there will be more income to pay for that.
So they may not have to raise, especially with
They
all
may
of
not
these
have to raise the
developments.
rate,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that your appraised value
Does
isn't
not
going
go
up. And so
Yeah.
even if you're not paying at an increased tax rate, you may still pay more in taxes because of your appraised value. So I can speak for myself as a homeowner, as a property owner, that my appraised value has gone up. So I know my property tax bills, when they come in later in the year, will be higher.
Yeah.
Because property values, and they're not going down across the state of Texas.
No.
They are going up across the board almost everywhere. There's very few places in our state where either they're holding the same, or, you may see some decreases where condition or something has affected a property value, or proximity to an undesirable something decreases a property value.
Sure.
But for the most part, most property values are going up. So your ability to say anything at all is at the ballot box and in the public meetings.
Yes, absolutely. And so if folks are wanting to learn more about their newly elected officials, or even ask their officials to tackle certain issues like that, where should they go? I get a feeling you're going to say the meetings.
It's a good place to start. These people who we elect, they're friends and neighbors, they're people in the community. You
Yeah.
might see them when you're out and about. You could talk to them over the garden fence if you happen to be their neighbors. You might see them when you're out shopping. You
Sure.
might see them at church. Wherever, and they are elected representatives. Yes, everybody has private time, but if you do see them, you might just say, hey, I have something. When's a good time for me to talk? When can we talk about this? You can go to the public meetings, all the city council meetings, all school board meetings, the Evergreen Underground Water Conservation District meetings, planning and zoning meetings. These are all open meetings. People can attend. Now, those elected bodies can, by law, go into closed session to discuss certain things,
Sure.
but you can attend the meetings, and there's public comments at all these meetings. You can bring up all kind of things at public meetings. You can contact your elected representatives, not just by bumping into them in the street, but
Right.
all of them have contact information. They're required to be able to be contacted. So your city website, if your city has a website, will have that contact information. Some of them will have entity issued phones, if depending on their role in the community. So there will be a contact number or email address where you can reach out to them. You can leave word for them at City Hall or at the school district. There's numerous ways to contact our elected officials. There's always a way. You can write a letter to the editor if you can't get hold of them any other way, and we'll consider publication if your issue is something that's of general interest and a lot of people need to know about. I mean, there's all kind of ways to do it.
Well, thank you for that. And how about for those who are wanting to learn more about running for local positions in the future? Are there, resources where they can learn more about each position and what they do, or,
There are a number of resources for that too. Again, I'm going to go back to, you can go to the meetings, which is a good place to start. I mean, if you're thinking about it, it's also a good learning tool for students.
Sure, yeah.
And you don't have to stay for the duration of meetings. Don't feel like you got to stay for the whole thing, but it's a great place to learn about civics and government and how our governments work at the local level.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to travel all the way to Washington, D.C. to see government in action. You can go to a planning and zoning meeting here in the community and spend an hour looking at how community members agonize over, does this fit the community? Does it meet all their requirements? It's a good place to learn what our boards and entities and councils do.
Right.
And what those elected representatives do. You can look up on, if they maintain a website, there's a good place to look at, who your elected representatives are. And there's always, school districts by law have to have some good explanations about the school board, what it means to serve, who can serve, what are the requirements.
Sure.
There's always a list of candidate requirements for any of our local elected entities. There's some minimum requirements that are across the board. I mean, you have to be 18, you have to live in the community, be a registered voter. There's some residency requirements, and they vary depending on what entity you want to serve. But all of that is available. Most of it's available online easily. You can ask for it from your city hall, your school administration. There's also an absolutely great resource. Texas, we're governed by the Texas Open Meetings Act.
Yeah.
And this kind of gives an outline of what elected bodies have to do under the law. So under the Texas Open Meetings Act, it gives all these guidelines. And on the Texas Attorney General's website, anybody,
I did.
and I know,
Yeah.
yay, Julia here has done it. Most of our reporters here at the Wilson County News over the years have done it. You can take the open meetings training. And how long does it take?
It's just a couple hours.
And it's a video, and it's free. If you're looking for information, that's a great resource. But just attending the local meetings, like I said, and you don't have to stay for a duration. If you want to go and raise a point, you can even attend a meeting and sign up for public comments and just say, I think you guys are doing a great job and I really appreciate you, because who doesn't need to actually hear that?
Yeah.
And quite often they are doing a good job. And for the most part, these are unpaid roles. These are volunteers.
Yes.
These people willingly step up. I know for a fact, one gentleman in one of the cities that we cover, he has been serving on that elected body. He just got reelected, but he's been doing this for more than 30 years.
Wow.
And he says, you don't realize until you get elected quite what you're getting into. Because people will call you at all hours of the day or night. They'll call you because my neighbor's playing loud music. Or I want to tell you what I really think of you for voting, and they will.
Yeah.
And they'll leave messages that you don't necessarily want the kids to hear on your answering machine. Because people like to use colorful language sometimes.
Very true.
He still ran for election because he still really believes in serving the community and, trying to do the best. And that's what most of our elected representatives here are doing. They're trying to do their part to represent us. And they don't get paid for it, and quite often they don't get thanked for it. But you can go and sign up at a public meeting and go,
thank you.
I think you're doing okay.
Yeah, this has been a very enlightening conversation, Annette. Thank you so much for connecting all of these dots for us and, kind of explaining some of these things that we saw on the ballots. And
well, thank you for inviting me to be here and getting to talk about something that I feel very passionate about as an American and as a citizen of our county, that it's important to me. And I will say, because we got Memorial Day coming up, that our right to vote is very important to me, because I come from a very military family. I'm one of the few siblings that has chosen not to. I serve in the First Amendment, free speech, and get to tell their stories. But because of them and people like them, we continue to have the right to vote. So I feel that when it's my opportunity to cast a vote about something, it's not just my right, but it's my responsibility. It's something that we could easily lose and has been on the brink of, many times through the years with different wars, with different things. And we still have it. And what a great privilege.
Well, thank you for that.
You bet.
That's all for today, folks. Thank you for tuning in to the Press Room with WCN-TV, brought to you by the Wilson County News. For more information about anything we mentioned in today's show, see the April 28th, April 25th, and May 10th editions of the Wilson County News, or visit us online at wilsoncountynews.com. You can also find articles corresponding to each topic discussed today in this video's description. Thank you to the Go Wilson 360 Community Calendar for sponsoring today's show. Go Wilson 360 makes spreading the word about community-wide events like fundraisers and celebrations simple and free. Simply visit the calendar online at gowilson360.com. Create your account, and you're ready to post your first event. Go Wilson 360 is brought to you by the Wilson County News in efforts to connect our community. To learn more about sponsoring the Press Room, call the Wilson County News at 830-216-4519. Remember to follow us where you're watching so you never miss an episode, and consider subscribing to receive the print, digital, or both editions of the Wilson County News every week. You can find more news or subscribe at wilsoncountynews.com. You can also download our app, Go Wilson, to receive updates from our newsroom at your fingertips. The app is available for Apple and Android devices at gowilsonapp.com. We hope you'll tune in next week for another episode of The Press Room. See you then!